Chapter 21. You gotta be crazy to be a duck hunter. The day was slaty, and the wind whipped the sound into a froth. The clouds tumbled low and menacing, with a suspicion of snow to come. My ears seemed to catch fire when we came into the warmth of the house, and little droplets clung to my nose. My hands were wrinkled from the cold water and as red as radishes. There was no feeling whatsoever in my feet inside their muddy hip boots. I was never happier in my life. Just look at the pair of us, the old man said. Froze stiff, probably going to die of the pneumonia, wet, muddy, and miserable, and both of us grinning at each other like Chessy cats. We're crazy as loons, but then you gotta be a little crazy to be a duck hunter. Nobody in his right mind would get up before dawn to sit and freeze in a blind on the off chance that some old buck mallard full of fish will fly close enough to get missed. We had had quite a day. The wind that tumbled the waters had broken up the enormous rafts of ducks, the ones that sit so maddeningly in the middle of the bay on a bluebird day. The low ceiling had them well down within range, and the wind had also blown the water out of the little secret pools. This happens only once in a while. The ducks were hunting for a place to sit, and they came to the decoys like cats to catnip. There ain't nothing, the old man said, as smart as a black mallard when the weather's with him. He can see from here to Japan, and he can spot a phony decoy from a mile high, which is generally where he's at. But you let that weather change and blow up a lot of wind and maybe a little snow, and there ain't nothing as stupid as a duck. That goes for geese too, and I reckon the old honkers is generally smarter than the duck. You get the right weather, and you have to bat 'em out of the blind. How about that fellow today that lost his mama? The old man was talking about a 2/3 grown Canada goose that had strayed off from the V up there in the dirty gray sky and was making pitiful sounds. The old man had snickered at it. Some of them big fellows are tougher than whip leather, he said, but this little fellow will be a real fine for your grandma's oven. See now how I call him down. I'm going to make some noises like his mama. He got out his goose call and began to talk like a goose mama. I have no way of writing down the sounds, but you could see that lost goose stick his neck down as soon as the old man wheedling call reached him. He dropped his flaps and came down out of the sky like a hawk after a fish. He came practically into the blind, and I took a whack at him and discovered I had done one of those things you do once in a blue moon. Shot my gun dry and plumb forgot to load her. That goose took off, and the old man said, "Don't worry, load her up and I'll call him back. Shoot him good this time, or we'll have him in the blind with us." He set up a gabble again, and the goose turned and came right back to the blind. This time I was loaded with fours, and I delivered a mess right into his head and neck, and he came down like a rock. It's a mean trick, the old man said, but you can always call a lost young goose with that mama noise, and they do eat better than the old ones. The old man had shot behind live decoys in his time. It had been legal. You'd have a hen mallard tied to a stick that was stuck in the mud, and she'd have had more conversation than a woman. She'd stand on her tail and flutter her wings and talk sexy to the passing flocks, and they would turn on a dime and come in with their feet hanging out and wings cocked. There is no easier target than a fat mallard or pintail grabbing for water with his feet and his wings locked. Well, the wind stirred the water to a devil's broth, the ducks poured in, and we filled our tickets. The mallards were the prettiest, of course, but it was the pins that the old man admired most. The French duck is gaudy, he said, with his yellow shoes and all those colors in his plumage and that big yellow shovel for a bill. But you can't trust him. He's a puddle duck, and if you don't give him enough grain, he'll double-cross you and eat himself sick on fish, just like any old merganser. But not the pin. Look at the gentlemanly clothes he wears, while the mallard looks like a pool hall sharpie. You'll never find a pintail eating fish. He'd starve first. I know you read a lot about the canvasback and how fine it is to eat, how all the politicians in this neck of the woods won't eat anything but terrapin and canvasback at their big dinners, but the old can ain't got any more morals than a mallard about eating fish. The only big duck I can absolutely certify is the pintail, and amongst the little ducks, I never ate a fishy teal so far. As a matter of fact, when all is said and done, for the dinner plate, you can't beat a teal. Ducks, the old man said. Now take teal. They fly faster than greased lightning, and on a teal in a tailwind, you gotta lead him 30 foot. but they will skitter in amongst the decoys right while you're blam-blamming at a bunch of other ducks and swim around like they own the pond. It don't make sense. Once you got a teal on the water, you practically can't scare him off it unless you shoot at him. I mentioned casually that we seem to waste an awful lot of ammunition shooting cripples, and that the few belts I had at teal sitting usually resulted in the teal taking off to Mexico. I can't explain it to you, the old man replied, but you got to remember that a duck in the water is like an iceberg. About 8/10 of him is under water, and the water sheds shot like tin roof. Practically got to hit him in the head to kill him because his wings are folded and the wing feathers and the back feathers shed shot just like water. I've noticed that in all sorts of bird shooting, it's a heap easier to shoot a flying bird than a sitting bird. All question of sportsmanship aside, a flying bird opens up his vulnerable parts, his softer feathered parts, and he spreads his wings enough to give you a chance to bust one. Sitting, wings folded, he's damn near armor plated. And there's one thing more, standing in a boat or a blind and aiming down at water does something to the shotgun pattern. Don't ask me what or how because I don't know, but shotguns were made to shoot either up or straight out, not down. A smarter man than me could probably tell you. All you got to do is believe it though, is to watch on the next cripple how irregular the pellets strike the water. The old man and I were not steady, permanent blind boys. He was against it. Said the ducks got to associate the blind with noise and sudden death of a relative and would skirt it just enough to pass outside good range unless it was such a dirty day that they completely lost their minds and became as crazy as duck hunters. The way to do it, he said, is in a bateau. The Cajuns call it pirogue, but bateau which is French for boat, my ignorant young friend, is a flat-bottomed skiff. You pull her out to where the wind and water seem right, and stick her in a bunch of reeds and rushes, and you cut yourself some roseaux or tuiles, which is French and Spanish respectively for reeds, and build your blind around your boat. You always wear a khaki hat to match the reeds, and you keep your face down until you are ready to shoot, because anything but a teal or a bluebird will see your white face or bald head from as high up as he can fly, and all the decoys and calls in the world won't get him down, unless, like I said, the weather's so lousy they've quit caring. You peep through a little hole in the reeds, and you let them circle your blind twice, unless it's a very clear day, and on the second circle, they'll decoy like cream. The man with patience will kill an awful lot of ducks, because when they drop those feet and lock those wings, you get the first one automatic, and all you got to do is, like the Cajun said, aim at the nose when the other half is climbing. A mallard looking for sky when he's just left the water is not really moving very fast because he's fighting for altitude and his centrifugal force is all out of kilter. I didn't ask the old man what centrifugal force was. Like I've said so many times, if you ask him, he's apt to tell you, and it would take an hour or so, and everybody from Julius Caesar to Einstein would get mixed up in it. The old man read me a lot of lectures about trash ducks and ducks that ought to be conserved. He wouldn't let me shoot a wood duck because he said they were too pretty and too little, and besides, there weren't enough of them to go around. He never would shoot a gray duck or a spoonbill if anything else was flying, and when I complained that they all looked like hen mallards at a distance, he said I ought to sharpen my eyesight or quit mingling with grown men. I took a crack at a swan once, and the old man took a crack at me. He said they weren't any good to eat, and they were dawdling few of them around, and what there was ought to be left in peace. Come to think of it now, even in those days of practically non-existent game wardens, abundant game, and large limits, one thing stands out about the old man. He never willingly took more fish or game than he could eat or give away, and he never shot a gun or allowed me to shoot a gun just to hear it go off and kill something useless. He's absolutely firm about leaving a nucleus of game, whether it was quail or deer, of never shooting females if the females were identifiable. This sex definition did not, of course, apply to quail or ducks, because unless it's mallards close at hand or a quail flying at you, there just isn't time enough to tell. But it seems to me I've been rattling around all over the place, and what I really wanted to concentrate on was what the old man said first, which is that it takes a crazy man to be a duck hunter. As we stood in front of the fire, steaming out of our wet clothes, after having risked death by drowning, exposure, and pneumonia, after having been up since black daylight, after having rowed and poled miles, After having frozen fingers setting out decoys and having frozen feet from inactivity, after having been uncomfortable constantly in the quest for a few pounds of bird meat that I didn't like to eat too terribly well, I concluded one thing. If you have to be crazy to hunt ducks, I do not wish to be sane.